So it was a tough business case. We had a lot of stakeholders who were very resistant. They didn't want the change, and it was about selling that change to those stakeholders, to try and get them to understand how much better our approvals could be made. And once it was implemented, it was great. They loved it. They said, "Why didn't we do this before?" And that seed was sown to then move into a bigger transformation of the entire supply chain. So I think any negatives around digital transformation can be outweighed by the positives, providing that you get the implementation right. The implementation has to be done properly. You have to have all your stakeholders on board. You've got to really sell them the vision and have them on board with you and take them on that journey to the point of delivering a really good digital system.
The Powering Procurement podcast is brought to you by Atomis, source to contract software designed to save you time and money. Hello and welcome to Powering Procurement, a podcast by Atomis, where we unpack the world of procurement and supply chain management with the help of industry leaders. I'm your host, Sian Lloyd, and this is our resident expert, Gareth Birch.
Hi, after 20 years in procurement, I may be billed as an expert, but believe me, I'm here to learn too.
Each episode, together with our expert guests, we'll dive into specific challenges and opportunities facing the procurement industry today.
And we'll explore easy wins and longer-term strategies to help you rise to the challenge of driving value through your work while showcasing the power of procurement.
Great. So let's get going. Hello and welcome back to Powering Procurement. Today, I'm delighted to introduce Luke Banks, a highly impressive head of procurement who's working globally to lead the way on transforming plastic waste into material that feeds the circular economy. Luke has been at Plastic Energy for the past 3 years, which is just his most recent chapter in a fascinating journey. At Plastic Energy, Luke is the global head of contracts and procurement, responsible for pushing forward digital transformation projects, optimizing supplier performance and value, and ensuring effective collaboration between international teams. Prior to joining Plastic Energy, Luke worked in strategic procurement. The sectors included manufacturing, construction, retail, and healthcare. An engineer by background, Luke has a strong technical mindset and is adept at building procurement teams from the ground up. In his current role, ESG is a core theme, along with the effective management of strategic supplier relationships. And in keeping with one of his previous roles with a mechanical watch manufacturer, Luke has a keen interest in horology. Sounds fascinating, Luke. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me on the show.
I'm going to have to definitely ask you about the horology later, but I'd love to start with an introductory question, really, that we ask all our guests, which is to find a bit about your background, your journey, and I understand that you are an engineer by trade, so it would be great, really, to understand how you moved from that area into your procurement roles.
Sure. So I studied engineering at Brunel. Like a lot of graduates, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go with my career. So I took a temping job at a company called Foster Wheeler, which was a global engineering contractor that worked with lots of various petrochemical, oil and gas companies to construct plants and refineries, other industrial complexes. I was working with the engineering team in control and instrumentation, and I remember one day we were looking at vibrational monitoring on pumps for an oil refinery we were working on, and I sat there and I looked at the calculations, and I saw calculations I'd done in my degree, and it was kind of a moment for me where I realized, wow, these calculations were not just theory, they're actually used in real life. And then I also remember that I absolutely hated them, and I hated doing them. They used to always puzzle me, and it kind of made me realize maybe maybe engineering is not my calling. I should be considering something else. And Foster Wheeler at the time had a newly set up procurement graduate program, and I was working in a very big project team, and the procurement team were mixed with the engineering team and all the other department functions. So I started exploring what procurement did and what their purpose was and how it fitted into a project environment. And I thought, this is more interesting to me than engineering. I like the fact that they're dealing with different people, different suppliers. They're constantly networking with stakeholders and getting a good overview of all the functions within the team, within the company. So I applied to join the procurement team, and as a procurement graduate, and was successful and took it from there really. So the program was a 2-year program, and you were rotated around various departments within procurement, the purchasing team, the logistics team, the materials management team, and I loved it. I met some great people. I got to explore lots of different projects, working with loads of different clients, and really big companies exposure, such as Saudi Aramco, BP, Shell. I even got to travel abroad. I spent several years working abroad within that industry. I went to Thailand, Australia. I even ended up in Kazakhstan, which was an incredible experience, living and working in these environments that you typically wouldn't get to experience. So one of the things that I believe having a technical background helped me with was understanding what you're procuring. There's lots of times where I've been in situations with my peers, and I feel like having a good technical understanding of the detail of the equipment that we're purchasing and the services that we're procuring has helped me out through negotiations, to make sure that I fully understand what we're working with, and also that the specifications involved very highly complex equipment. So that's that's really how I took my technical background into a procurement function. And I know a lot of people say that they fell into procurement, but for me, it was an active career decision, which I feel bucks the trend slightly. But hopefully, in the future, we'll be able to get to a point where people are actively choosing procurement as a career.
Luke, that was some fascinating insight just to kick us off, really. And I'd love to hear a bit more now about Plastic Energy. You've been with them for about 3 years, and it sounds like that they really are on a global mission to make an environmental impact. So tell us a little bit about how you're aligning the procurement team's function with this global mission.
Sure. So Plastic Energy is a technology company that's looking to build a circular economy through chemical recycling of end-of-life plastics. The company is advocating for plastic-to-plastic recycling to be included as part of the overall value chain within plastics, and for plastic to plastic to be included in the global recycled content quotas. The company has a trademarked TAC process which takes plastic, end of life plastic, which would normally end up in going through incineration or landfill, or even in some cases into our oceans, which I'm sure people have seen lots of publications on. So we take that end of life plastic and we convert it back into a virgin polymer through our TAC process, which we then work with our petrochemical partners to turn back into plastic, thereby creating a circular economy within the plastics chain.
And in terms of the procurement function there and your function, obviously you've been there now with the company for 3 years. Um, has the function changed during that time? Have you implemented any changes or have you observed changes since you've been there?
Yeah, I think the internally the company is a relatively young company. We've got two plants operating, and we're in the process of constructing a further two at a larger scale, one of which has just produced its first oil. So it's pretty exciting time for us. And I've seen, since I've joined the company, the procurement function move from a strategic function when we started constructing those first plants into an operational function. My predecessor was a really excellent strategic thinker, and I took over the reins and have implemented strategies, moved more to the operational side of procurement, whilst implementing further strategies for how we grow the function as a whole. So it's been really interesting, and as it's a small team, it's a small company. There's been a lot of change internally, but it's given me the autonomy to make those changes myself, which is fantastic. I think for anyone looking to get into procurement, being able to have some kind of autonomy and decision making within your job function is really important, because it gives you that extra insight into how a function develops from beginning to end.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And also, of course, this is leadership as well, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's quite daunting when you're going from a very large engineering company where processes and procedures are mapped out, and you're there to follow the process, follow the procedure, to then go and work in a greenfield environment where processes and procedures may be very thin on the ground or non-existent. So I've worked in environments where there have been no processes at all, and I've come in and developed those from scratch. So it does. There's a very steep learning curve involved, but I think with the right network, the right stakeholder environment, which you need to create yourself, you can really develop the right processes and procedures and policies to get the procurement function off to a good start, and that sets you up from the start through the whole procurement life cycle.
Really interesting to get a sense of your leadership journey as well there, Luke. So thanks very much. Going to turn to some topics now that we like to cover on the podcast, and it's really interesting to get our guests' different perspectives on this. So first of all, obviously responsible procurement is a really hot topic, and given the area that you particularly are working in, really interested to hear your views on this, particularly about how you work with your supply chain to address those environmental and the carbon reduction concerns.
Yeah, it's a really hot topic at the moment, and for good reason. It's on everyone's agendas and talking points, and we're seeing so much conversation being had around the whole sustainability ESG landscape. And I think there are some very important key things that you can do as a procurement function to help build that out, help integrate that into your own policies, into your own functions, and also help your internal stakeholders understand the importance of this topic. So we've started with really looking at how we onboard our suppliers through comprehensive, not too onerous, but fairly comprehensive onboarding questionnaires when we're onboarding a new supplier. We've started using risk analytics tools to look at all different aspects of a supplier when we're onboarding them. There's a lot of great tools out there. Um, it's really key that you find the right tool that works for you. There's a huge amount of metrics for ESG and sustainability that you can consider. So it's finding the right metrics which fit into your company, how they work for you, and how you can make them visible to your senior management and your board, because inevitably they'll want you to report on those metrics, and they have to have some meaning. There's no point in having a blanket um, dashboard full of metrics that no one looks at have no meaning to. But I think a lot of the key metrics are grouped into ESG. So if you're looking at the environmental metrics, there's the scope 1, 2, 3 emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, and then speaking to your suppliers about those emissions. But what are they doing to tackle those emissions? What policies do they have in place? How are they working with their supply chain to help reduce waste reduction, water consumption? There's lots of things that your suppliers can be doing and should be doing, which then flow up the supply chain into your own metrics. So when you're looking at the social aspects, there's topics such as what suppliers are doing within their own environment for their supply chain, for things like whistleblowing. Do they have any policies in place for whistleblowing? What are their policies on DEI, human rights? What are their CSR targets? And then finally, overall governance. What is their ESG policy? Do they have a policy in place? Is there something they are doing to actively address ESG concerns? And again, we use risk analytics tools to look at that. You can look at ultimate beneficial owners of companies, who has controlling functions, because in the modern environment, there's a, I suppose it's a bit of a minefield when it comes to who's working with which countries and who's involved in the various political minefield landscape that's going on at the moment. So it's important to understand who your suppliers are working with, because eventually you'll be part of that landscape as well. So you need to make sure you're working with the right suppliers, and maintaining good relationships to better your own ESG function.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think obviously insight being key there, and the global dimension that you brought in was really interesting to hear about. It's a really, a different dynamic that can be quite common for a lot of people, can't it?
It is, yeah, and it's always evolving. Every single day you'll see something in the news, and I think that's another point to consider about ESG. The ESG function is to make sure that you're staying on top of all the latest developments within your own supply chains, global supply chains, what's happening with the economy and the political landscape, because at some point, all of those different factors, those external factors, will end up impacting your own internal function, especially when you're working with suppliers across the world, who work in multiple countries, supply various other companies around the world. It all ends up coming back into your own function. So you need to make sure that you stay on topic, and you address those. You address all the different issues that are happening in the world.
Yeah, and I think also just picking up on the point you made there about managing those relationships as well, that's really interesting. I mean, I don't know whether you can give any insight in terms of, some of the response that you generally do have from suppliers.
I think supplier relationship management is one of the most important aspects of the procurement function. You're working with suppliers every day. Everyone knows um, everyone knows the basics of supplier relationship management, but in in uh, in the environment that I'm in, our strategic partnerships are crucial. We work with some really important partners to help deliver our technology, and having good relationships with all your suppliers is paramount. But when it comes to strategic partnerships, it's kind of the next level of relationship management. Sometimes you may find that the products and the services that you're procuring may have to be sole sourced. There's only one vendor that can supply that equipment or that service. So trying to find ways in which you can work together and leverage your partnership with each other is really important. Regular contact, regular feedback, regular visits to each other's premises. It all adds up into developing that relationship. And you may want a relationship to develop quickly and mature quickly, but sometimes it could take months, even years, to get a good relationship in place to make sure that you're getting the best out of a strategic partnership with your suppliers. But that's not to say that you can't have the same with suppliers that fall outside of that strategic supplier sector. There's many different suppliers within our supply chain that we have transactional relationships with, which are equally important. So good supplier relationship management is probably one of the top three things I would say is an important um, must
Yeah.
have within a procurement career.
It's right up there, absolutely. Thank you, Luke. Really good to get your insight and experience on that really important area. If we turn to digital transformation now, because in the introduction, I was telling people, obviously, this is a key area for you. Um, Perhaps you could share some of the real benefits that you've seen through introducing this, and how they can help you successfully carry out projects.
Sure, I've been working for 20 years now, and I've gone from seeing digital transformations in its infancy into what we're seeing now with complete transformations throughout an entire company and supply chain with AI implementation. I've worked in environments where I've pushed for digital transformation and been told, no, we like our robust paper-based system. My experience is there's absolutely no robust paper-based system that can outperform a digital implementation that's done properly. And in my experience, there's no paper-based system that can outperform a properly executed and implemented digital transformation project. There's lots of different aspects to consider when going through a digital transformation, but the benefits far outweigh the negatives when you're looking at going through a full digital transformation. You gain so much more time back in your everyday working capacity because of that digitization. You get lots of repetitive tasks picked up and dealt with digitally. All the information that you're holding, you may be holding it in different file areas, different SharePoint drives, different folders. It's all amalgamated and stored and filed correctly as part of a digital transformation, such as source to contract or procure to pay. There's another very important aspect I've noticed with digital transformation is stakeholders. So in the company, you want to bring your stakeholders on board with your digital transformation and really sell them the vision of how much better their working relationship can be with procurement, with other departments through the digital transformation, how much easier it can make their everyday working capacity. Approvals process is another aspect. So I've worked in environments where we've gone through digital transformations just as a starting point through the approval process, where we were using paper-based approvals and it was taking weeks of documents sitting on people's desks, having to constantly give people a nudge to get things signed and approved, to putting a business case together about why the company, which was a fairly large company, there was about 12,000 people within the company, but why we should move from paper-based approval systems to digital approval systems. So it was a tough business case. We had a lot of stakeholders who were very resistant. They didn't want the change, and it was about selling that change to those stakeholders, to try and get them to understand how much better our approvals could be made. And once it was implemented, it was great. They loved it. They said, "Why didn't we do this before?" And that seed was sown to then move into a bigger transformation of the entire supply chain. So I think any negatives around digital transformation can be outweighed by the positives, providing that you get the implementation right. The implementation has to be done properly. You have to have all your stakeholders on board. You've got to really sell them the vision and have them on board with you and take them on that journey to the point of delivering a really good digital system.
That's really interesting. You're making that key point there about how important it is getting it right at that time of wanting to implement it. Perhaps a follow-up would be, is there any advice or anything that you've found along the way in terms of following implementation? Any challenges about keeping the team or stakeholders engaged then going forward? Obviously, in the case study you were talking about there, it was very much, well, why did we do it sooner? But I was just wondering whether there are particular challenges then around keeping engagement going forward.
Yeah, I think there's always the challenge of keeping people engaged who may be outside that sphere of procurement. And it really is just a case of constant communication, feedback, talking, having meetings, getting teams together, having regular updates, finding out um, what their concerns may be, if they have any pain points that they don't like, and getting them addressed and resolved quickly. Because once you've formed your stakeholder team, keeping them satisfied is absolutely paramount to delivering any projects, including digital transformations. It's it's extremely important that your stakeholders are heard and they're understood, and you understand what their concerns are, and how you can help them. You want to be there to be able to help them. You want to be seen as someone who can resolve issues, solve problems, and be there to ensure that the delivery is met, and everyone's kept happy and satisfied.
Absolutely. Well, I'll change tack a little bit now and turn to recruitment. I mean, that's something that we like to highlight here on the Powering Procurement podcast. Particularly with, our younger audience as well, and people perhaps thinking of entering the procurement profession. When you're recruiting, what particularly are you looking for? And would you say that that's changed over time?
I think it has. For me, it's changed over time. I think SIPs and MSIPs qualifications are becoming a lot more relevant. Um, you're getting a lot more people becoming MSIPs qualified, which is great. They're taking procurement as a profession seriously. They they want to get into a procurement function where they can really develop themselves, and they want to be able to add value to the whole function rather than just come in and just pick up tasks that may be considered administrative or repetitive. I'm seeing a lot more people coming into the procurement function who want to make real change within organizations because they know that procurement is still a function that can deliver real value to a business. And I think procurement as a whole in the last 20 years has really moved on from being a support function to a strategic partner within a business. And I think I'd like to see that continue. I'd like to see more procurement people move into senior, possibly board director, um, that kind of level within a business, because the value that procurement delivers it is vital towards an organization's success.
We've heard that, time and time again with our guests on the podcast. And really, I think it was something that you were talking about earlier um, in some of our previous conversation about procurement as a strategic force and its perception as such. You've just said, obviously, you feel that that is changing. Do you, have you ever been impatient about that change, wanting to be seen sooner, wider? What have been the challenges there?
So I worked in oil and gas petrochem for 13 years, and it was always what I would consider a well-oiled machine. You go into a function, the procedures and the processes are laid out for you. You follow them. Um, it's all very well. One aspect is all very straightforward by following those procedures. There's still the negotiations and the supplier management function. But after my time in that industry, the reason that I left was because I wanted to be heard as an individual. I wanted to have more strategy. I wanted more autonomy within my career, and I knew that in the position I was in, I wasn't going to get it. So I made quite a big decision to move away from that industry, and that's how I stepped out of it, and I actively looked for a role where I could add value, I could have some more visibility, have some more autonomy, and I ended up working in healthcare within uh, capital projects, constructing new hospitals, upgrading hospitals, and it was kind of um, an awakening for me to see how much value procurement has within an organization, because I'd gone from procurement being so well integrated into a company that it had become routine, to move into a different company that that has that procurement, where procurement is placed at a much higher level. They're seen as a strategic partner. They're taken seriously, and I had such a great time working there. It was a fantastic team. The work was really interesting. Working in healthcare was very rewarding. You learn a huge amount being around really clever people, doctors, nurses. It was great. I really enjoyed my time there, and it did give me um, that hunger for more strategic thinking and autonomy within my own role. Um, so you do, I think, as a procurement professional, you do have to consider what you want to get out of your career, where you want to end up, what what um what really drives you as a person. So you have to take that time to reflect upon yourself about what you want out of your career, and that's what I did. I think I've been very fortunate with the direction my career has taken because of those decisions I've made.
Yeah, and great to hear about the other experiences, how you valued that from other professions that you were coming into contact with, and how important that can be in ongoing growth and learning as well, really. We spoke a little bit about AI. You were talking about transformation. You mentioned AI. Obviously, it's a huge topic. Um, it would be great, perhaps, if you could speak a little bit about how you found it to be effective, and if there are people, leaders who are listening who haven't yet embraced AI, who don't see perhaps how it would be working for them on a day-to-day basis, to hear what your message really would be around that.
Yeah, I think, well, I'm certainly not a well-seasoned expert on AI, but I have been exploring the different areas, and I think it's not really realistic to ignore AI anymore. You still encounter a lot of people inside and outside of procurement who want to pretend that AI doesn't exist, or their lives are not going to be benefited by it. The world's completely changing. Technology's changing. You can't ignore what's happening with AI. So, I mean, even we as a company, within our automation team, are developing and implementing different AI tools to use within our plants. So it's a really interesting area to be involved in. And even as just a starting point, if you're unsure about how AI can benefit you, you can just start off, very lightly on your own personal journey of working with LLMs like ChatGPT. Um, Sorry, I'll start that again. It's really important to start working on a personal level with applications like ChatGPT, Google Gemini, those free to use tools, start seeing how you can integrate those tools into your everyday working life. Not to do your work for you, but there's certainly things that AI can help with. And then taking the next step is to look at what suppliers you're working with, or what software providers you're working with, how they're implementing AI. So, for example, if you're working with software that provides tendering, how can AI help you and support you within the tendering environment? Can it help with the repetitive tasks that will then free up your time to work on the more strategic pieces that you're working on? There's lots of ways to start considering how AI can help you, because you want it to complement your work, not do your work for you. That's I think that's actually a challenge in itself, because a lot of people are thinking, who are new to AI, think it's going to replace me. It's going to take over what I'm doing. It's You can flip it and realize it's not going to do your work for you. It's going to complement you. It's going to free up your time to be able to allow you to have more of an impact and a benefit to your company, to work on the really important key strategic pieces that need to be delivered.
And a case, I guess, of it's ongoing really learning in that area, isn't it, for most people?
It is, yeah, including myself. I'm learning every day about different AI tools, and I think AI is evolving at such a quick pace. It's important to try and keep up with what's happening within that arena. It's incredibly fast paced. Every day, you're looking at the news and LinkedIn and seeing different AI technologies being implemented. Everyone's talking about agents at the moment, and how AI agents can be implemented into the software that you're using to do those tasks for you. So it's think of it more as an exciting prospect, rather than something daunting and something to be worried or scared about.
Great advice there, Luke. Now I'm going to change tack. I've got to go back to that line in the introduction and ask about your interest in horology. As we are coming to the close of the podcast, but before I ask our final question, which I ask all our guests, it'd be great to hear a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So I think probably because I have uh, an interest in mechanics and an engineering background, I've always been interested in mechanical watches. So not the battery powered watches, but the um, the mechanical watches that such as Rolex and all the all those other big Swiss manufacturing names. It's just something that's always stuck with me. My father introduced me to mechanical watches. I've always been interested into the micro mechanics behind watches and the aesthetics of watches. So being able to work for a mechanical wristwatch company was amazing. It was an opportunity that I couldn't turn down. So I worked for a company called Bremont, and that was a great opportunity. It was being able to work in something you're truly passionate about. Was again something that I've always considered to be very fortunate to be able to have done that. You're stepping into a world where you've only seen it from the outside, to then getting into the actual manufacturing of watches and working with suppliers who supply these products, and they're so intricate, um, highly finished. The work that goes into a mechanical watch is incredible. There's hours and hours of product development and machining and finishing, and not just that, but the retail side of the watch industry. So it gave me a really good insight into something that I love. Going back to what I was saying about working in, or making that decision within your career about working in areas that you're interested in, you're passionate about. If you're fortunate enough to have that opportunity, I'd just say take it, because the time I spent there was great. It gave me a really good insight into a completely different area of procurement that I'd never really thought about before. I just looked at watches as something that I love and I wanted to buy, and I never really thought about the work that had gone into it. And I still have that passion for watches and for horology. I still work with some smaller brands just to assist them in their growth. And I do that just as something that keeps me interested and keeps me keen and keeps my foot in the door of that area of that area of procurement. I guess it's something that's I think will stick with me for the rest of my life. It's a great industry to work in. You're working with all sorts of different people, different manufacturers, really intricate technologies, and yeah, love it. Absolutely love
Brilliant.
love watches, love horology, love the mechanics behind it.
Your passion's really shining through, Luke, on that, and really interesting to hear about it as well. And I guess, pardon the pun, but our time on the podcast is coming to a close. I couldn't resist it as a journalist. And I am going to ask our final question, which you've spoken a little bit about actually in the round during our chat, but that's come through in your interest in procurement. But we always ask this final question to our guests because we know, this sector, like so many, it faces challenges around recruitment, around retention. We're very focused on, wanting to shine a light on the sector positively. Perhaps if there are young people who would be interested in joining and following a type of career that you've had. So, what would you say really makes you happy that this is the journey that you took?
I think firstly, when you're working in procurement, you get a very holistic view of a company. You're interacting with lots of different functions, lots of different stakeholders. You get a really good understanding of how a business operates, how your company operates. Um, I always preferred that rather than working in a more siloed position where you're only focused on your deliverables. So you get that, and you get the commercial exposure as well. You understand more about the profit and loss within a company, how the business is generating revenue. Secondly, when I started working in procurement, I was uh, quite shy. I was really, I wouldn't say I was a wallflower, but I didn't like, or I wasn't an effective communicator. And when you're in procurement, you're working with so many different people. You're constantly communicating every single day. I remember I used to hate picking up the phone. Um, when I started, everyone had a desk phone, and I just remember thinking, I need to call the supplier. I need to ask him whatever question. I just did not like picking up the phone. But once you're exposed to that, once you're into that habit of communicating, it becomes much easier, and then you learn how to become a more effective communicator. The more experience you have, the more you learn about how to improve your communication skills, how you can get the best out of your suppliers and stakeholders through your effective communication. So I really value that part of my career is becoming, I believe, an effective communicator. Uh, the third the third thing for me was or is something more personal, but because of the industries I've worked in, I've traveled and lived in so many incredible places across the world. I've met some really, really wonderful people in my time. I've worked with some great people. I've experienced cultures that many people may not be fortunate enough to experience, and I've made some really good friendships through that time. So I'm really grateful to everyone that I've worked with and the companies I've worked with to give me that opportunity. And I suppose the last thing was I met my wife at work. So if it wasn't for my career in procurement, I wouldn't be married. Well, I may be, but not to her.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for being so candid. And we've covered so much ground in the podcast. It's been fascinating listening to you, hearing about your journey. So thanks for joining us. We hope everyone's enjoyed this episode. And of course, I like to remind people, don't forget you can follow us. You can check out our other podcasts, our previous episodes too. And we'll be back with Powering Procurement next time.
That wraps up this episode of Powering Procurement. We hope you enjoyed that as much as we did.
Visit our website at atomis.co.uk or follow us on LinkedIn to continue the conversation.
Remember to subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you choose to listen.
Thanks for joining us, and see you next time on Powering Procurement.